All right, good to go. James from Unchained Brands here, and we are working still through our four quadrants, the four quadrants, storytelling around recovery, diet, nutrition, meditation and wellness, and employment. So as we go, you're going to get a taste of each of those quadrants from our guests. And today, our special guest is actually a friend of mine, a former bandmate of mine, Harrison Meyle. Harrison, welcome to our podcast, I guess. Let's call it a vlog, a blog, whatever it may be. But thanks for joining us and great to have you.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be a part of this, and I'm happy to relay my story as best I can.
Well, that's going to be a treat because I lived part of this with you, and that's going to be the fun part about this. We have no script. There's no preparation here. Sorry for the noise. So we're going to shoot for off the cuff, right? Let's go for it. So first and foremost, what would be your background that you could provide for us? Just give us an idea of your background, and we'll start there.
Well, I'm a feature film sound editor right now, so I guess that wouldn't really be my background. It'd be what I currently am doing, and I guess I'll start from there. As a sound editor, I work in the sound departments of feature films. My responsibility is the soundtrack for a film or a television show. So basically, on a day-to-day basis, what my job entails um, is making sure that the soundtrack is acceptable to the clients, to anybody that's involved on a financial aspect of their intellectual property, the film or TV show. And specifically, I work in the dialogue department. I typically supervise dialogue. So what that means is I'm responsible for the dialogue portion of the soundtrack. Anything that's spoken, um, anything that entails really any storytelling aspect is what I deal with on a day-to-day basis. I also record actors, so I get actors in. I recommend uh, different spots in a film or TV show where I believe things should be re-recorded, for either continuity's sake, for technical reasons, um, any any sort of reason that we should have the actor or actress come back in. So then they come in, and then I record them, and there's a whole process behind that. But that, in a nutshell, is what I do. I prepare that dialogue portion of the film track, film soundtrack, or TV soundtrack, um, and that is what I basically supervise. On a day-to-day basis with people underneath me. So I usually have a dialogue editors underneath me that um, work with me to create this. So that's what I do. I'm also currently I've worked with a lot of different people over the years. Recently, I won 2 Emmys on the Beatles' 8 Days a Week, The Touring Years, which is a Ron Howard film documentary. And I also did a TV show called Barry. I did a couple episodes in season 2, one of which we got the Emmy for. So that was very exciting. That's sort of a career highlight for me recently,
Mm.
um, among other things. But my background, I came from a sound background. I've been playing music my whole life. I've been playing piano since I was 4 years old. I play guitar, I play bass, I play drums. I don't look at myself as a guitar player per se, bass player per se, or drummer. I probably look at myself more as a piano player, but overall, a musician. I mean, that's essentially what I'm what I am. Early on, as a musician, as a child, I took lessons, and I just as every young musician does, and then I started to get into bands, um, and bands are kind of I felt I was able to do what I needed to do and pick and choose what I wanted to play, um, and that's kind of just where I got to, as far as family life and stuff like that. In terms of backgrounds, my family was extremely supportive. I wouldn't have been able to get where I am today without them. Friends, of course, like you. Um, so that's really, where my starting point. Um, I went to a small private school growing up. I graduated. My graduating class was 10 people, and the area where I grew up, James, where you also grew up, there's so many private schools in that small area. I mean, it seems like there's private schools everywhere, or at least at the time there was.
Yep.
And I just happened to go to one of those many private schools, and it was great. I also started off in public school before that, and it was it was a much larger thing for me, with just many more people. But I feel that uh, I enjoyed growing up being able to go. I went to going to the multiple schools, going to the public school and then going to a private school. It enabled me to really um, expose myself to a lot of different people, and that also helped in my life because I was able to learn how to deal with people, how to deal with how to talk to people, how to uh, move my career forward, and also it helped me find people that I would play with, musically.
Right.
So
Right.
anyway, that's that in a snapshot. That's my background.
But that's what was really amazing about. There's a couple of different things about you that I take away from observing you through the years. One was when we first met, you had like a radiating personality. I know it sounds corny to say it to you directly, but people were gravitating to you, and you would say something and they would gravitate even closer to you. And I grew up an introvert. I remember when I was 5, I told my mother. She said, "Oh, do you want to go to Bobby's birthday party or something?" I said, "No." And she said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, because there's going to be people there, like." That was a clear sign at age 5 I was an introvert. So I always admired somebody who could just walk up to somebody and be like, "Hey." And at the time, that may felt like we were both, having beers and doing our thing back then. But and yeah, the inhibitions came down. Of course, it was easier. But I think in your professional career, now you're sober and in recovery, you still have that innate talent. It's like part of you because you've grown a career based on being great at what you do and being able to communicate with people and connect. And that radiating personality you have actually is a massive reason why I think you've achieved the status you have as an Emmy, multi-Emmy winning, uh, artist. Let's be honest, right? You create. So what's really neat about it is that I've seen you go through the hard time, and then now we reconnected in the good times, right? Although those were good times too. It was hard, but it was still great because we played music together and we did a lot. So what I'd like to ask you is, where at what point in the recovery process did you go, "Oh man, I got to change"? Like, what triggered that for you?
Well, it's interesting you say. I mean, I your take is so incredibly dead on, and rings just so true to me because, well, for one, it's funny you say that you're an introvert, and I always thought, with you, that you had this excellent side to you and I remember the first time that I actually met you, I was thinking about this, um, and you would see me play at a local bar in Philadelphia, called McGuire's in Conshohocken, and you approached me during a set break or something, and you said, "Hey, I've got this band. I'm looking for a keyboard player. This and that." Your personality really, you had this really sort of take charge, great vision, and the way that you illustrated your band was perfect, and it really got me to make that decision to play with you and then become friends with you. But anyway, yes, I think personality wise, I always looked at my ability to communicate as a strength, and I think that that's helped me definitely, moving forward. Um, and I think what what's sort of been an interesting result of that is that although I have been able to communicate myself and get in situations, really positive situations with people like yourself, and playing in bands that really got me going and really got me in the direction I was. It also caused me to have some social implications as well,
Mm,
and I it was sort of unintended consequences, and that drove me towards um, you know, getting into areas where I was uh, drinking too much, abusing alcohol, early on. And so I think what you're pointing out um, as a real positive thing for me, and it was also kind of played against me early on.
mm,
Um, I felt the need that I needed to constantly socialize. I felt that I was missing out. I had this weird sort of feeling that I was missing out on um, socializing with people, and I didn't really need to. I didn't. There was no need for me to do that, but I felt I needed to get out, and I needed to fill some weird void.
sure.
And the drinking, that's where that kind of started, and that was right around the time. Of course, we had been, all of us had been drinking before that, but when we really started, you and I, playing together, was there. It was an incredible time, but sort of towards the end of it was when I started to really realize, wait, um, this is something is a little different for me. I'm not the same person I was before, where I was able to talk and socialize to a certain extent and not have to really rely on drinking.
Right.
Um, it turned into that's just what I wanted to do most of the time, while I was socializing. So it sort of went hand in hand.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a point there too. So let's just do a quick history lesson without going too far with it. But like we started to play a lot, and there were moments where like, and I say this, I think I said this to you before, but there was like these moments of like, without when you weren't there playing with us, it was like, man, there was such a void in the band, and like your contribution was like just so profound when you were there, and when you weren't there, it wasn't as fun, right? But I'll tell you, I think some of the times you weren't able to show up was because I think you were struggling, man. And now I look back, it's easier for me to say, oh yeah, that was a pretty clear sign you were struggling through that. Back then, didn't even notice it. We were just like, man, he didn't show up for practice today, or man, we'd love to have seen you here, or whatever. But do you remember back then, like being in and out because of that, or was it just because you were busy? I wasn't, hindsight being 2020. Maybe it was more, right? Maybe it was something that was pulling at you. Do you feel
No,
that was the case?
I'm glad you brought this up because, yeah, I mean, what I felt at the time, and for anybody who's watching this, um, this time was a time when things really could have taken off for all of us. I really felt that we harnessed a lot of energy,
Hmm.
you and I, and everybody else involved in the band. Um, and we really, really could have done, the sky was the limit. I mean, it really, truly was.
Hmm.
And I was struggling at the time to make commitments, and especially commitments to you. And this was going on in other portions of my life as well.
Right, right.
But I think that's what and I hope, I mean, you know, now it's quite a bit of years later, so, you know, it's all water under the bridge at this point. But at the time, I felt very guilty, and that kind of, it didn't, it probably did, it didn't help my situation, but I felt guilty because I felt that I was really letting you down. You know, I really felt that I was letting everybody in the band down, and that's not what I wanted to do. It was never a thought in my mind. You know, it was never a thought that, like, I don't want to show up to practice because I don't feel like it. You know, I don't want to show up to practice because I'm still in bed. It was never that case, because I actually have a weird um, sort of deal going on where I have to be on time. And this came out later, which I can get into, but I have to honor my commitments. And I've just that's the way I was brought up. So handicapping that
Hmm.
with alcohol at the time really impacted me, and it impacted my relationships. And it impacted me because I knew I wasn't fulfilling my commitments, and I it would drive me crazy because I only knew to fulfill my commitments.
Right.
So I felt like it really, I you know, there was a time, I guess, you know, a good way to kind of illustrate this is to actually talk about a specific point. But there was a time when, there's many times, but there was one time I remember where um, you needed me. We were going to play some show. It was, I think, down, you know, in the Baltimore area. I think it was, you know, or down there or whatever. But we, I just, that day I was having a bad day where I was like, my anxiety was just triggered. And that was the thing, you know, with my drinking at the time. I did it because it was a social thing, and then it turned into where, you know, like I said before, where it was happening more and more and more, you know, I was drinking more and more and more because, you know, there was just, that's what I felt like I needed to do to socialize. So, what happened, which was interesting and was something that I didn't expect, was that my anxiety
Mm. Right.
started around that time that we were together, and the band really started to pick up. You know, I really started having this horrible time with anxiety. I had this feeling that impending doom. I mean, it's the only way I can put it, and it was
Yeah.
just, it was
Yeah.
so useless, you know, because it was silly, but it was just something that I was living with, and I couldn't figure out what was starting it. You know, what was, you know, I had an idea, maybe it was alcohol, but I had no idea why I had this like tremendous, awful anxiety.
Yeah.
You know, and anyway, what the anxiety prevented me from doing, and I look back and it's really just sad, is things like with you, where we were playing in Baltimore, and all of a sudden I feel anxiety about the drive down there because, you know, I don't know why. You know, I'm not sure. I didn't really investigate that much, but I was just like pumped up about the gig and just getting anxiety and thinking, you know, probably what if I have an anxiety attack here or there, you know, whatever. And
Yeah.
drinking extinguished that. You know, the drinking was a way for me to self-medicate and so it was sort of a vicious cycle at that point. But I remember talking to you and telling you, I don't think I can make it down. I believe that I believe that was almost exactly the words I said to you. And you said, you were like, "What?" You were like, "Dude, you can. You're fine. I'll pick you up. I'll drive you down." Like, you had this great solution. And actually, now that I think about it, I think you might have actually I think you might have talked me into say, and it probably triggered my commitment thing where I thought, I can't let him down. I can't stop this commitment. So I'm going to have him pick me up.
Right.
So anyway, that's this is where it all sort of culminated. You know, with you know, for me, the alcohol portion of my life that really was negative.
Yeah. 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 So, man, there's so much here. To, like, we could talk for hours, and it's fantastic. It's actually somewhat therapeutic. Um, one of the things I was thinking of was like how people respond to that. So even anxiety, I think, is such an interesting topic that we should even explore at a further time, because I can guarantee you right now there's people watching this and hearing this and going, this is me. Holy S, this is what I'm dealing with. So now, in the spirit of giving back to others and trying to be of service to others, this is the pivot point right here. How you recognized it, how did you change? What did you do? And what advice could you give people? Because you went from that and playing local bands with, some local jackass like me, to becoming a guy in LA working for some huge studios, winning Emmys. There's a point there where you said, I'm going to pivot, I'm going to change. There's so many people right now are watching this going, I want to be that guy. How did you change? What did you do?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, that really was my huge struggle, was this anxiety and the self-medication with alcohol. And there was no way I was going to get anywhere. And like I was saying, you were getting very frustrated with me at the time, and which you should have, and everybody else obviously should have. And I'm sure, you know, there are other people out there that probably have gone through the same thing. What changed for me, what really, what was the eye opener, was I convinced myself. Well, I guess it was sort of the reverse at first. I convinced myself that, well, it probably isn't the alcohol. It's just I have anxiety. So I would get treated. I would go to, the doctor, and they put me on, antidepressants at one point. They gave me, benzos, and that was like, that's like putting gas on a fire. So it just wasn't working out. Nothing was working, and I couldn't and finally, I just was honest with myself. And I said, the anxiety, Harrison, the root of it, there's one common denominator, and that's the alcohol. It's the alcohol. And I thought to myself, if I stop that,
right, then
I'm able to move myself forward. As hard as it may be to stop it on a social level, because that was my whole world was built around that, really. Socializing and drinking, and I, and then to answer your question or your statement, as far as saying, I went to LA and I was able to get a career. At first, it was exactly what we were experiencing, which was, I was in a shell. I was just scared, and what I did was I forced myself.
Right.
I forced myself out. And I forced myself into situations that were extremely uncomfortable for me, and I was anxiety ridden. And I did it, but people never really took me seriously. And it was because I was still self-medicating myself with drinking. So there was a point where I just had to come to that realization, and look at how A plus B was equaling, C, which was what I didn't want, or equally anxiety. And I had to realize that there was a part of that equation that was just causing me to get into this anxiety state. So yeah, I mean, once I realized that, and once I took initiative and stopped that, I was able to. All of a sudden, the world was my oyster.
That's kind of the pivot point for you then. You had this moment. See, my partner and my business partner he has a similar statement. And I think a lot of people will have a similar moment, right? If not, those who have gone through it have had the similar moment. How about maintaining sobriety, maintaining your health, right? You look great, by the way. Should have said that in the beginning. I haven't seen you too much. Obviously, we saw each other last year for the first time in years, but I haven't seen you in a year. How would you say? What advice would you give around people to stay sober, and how do you maintain it? What would you recommend? Around that.
Okay, these are excellent questions, and this is exactly how I got to the point where I'm at, is identifying and then maintaining. You know, it was the maintenance afterwards. And that actually might have been the most important thing. Um, you know, it's all mental. It's all a mental game, you know, and it's like it's kind of like golf. You know, I grew up playing music and, you know, I grew up as a musician, but I also grew up as, you know, playing golf too. And golf, you get in a situation where your mind's, you know, you're on the green and you've got a 8-foot putt and, you know, you don't want to 4-putt it. And you just want to take your mind out of it, you know? And it just, once your mind gets into it,
Mhm.
it's like, you know, I see Tiger Woods, you know, has been experiencing this recently, you know, where your mind gets into it and then you just flub it. And um, so I've to maintain the point where I got at, which was identifying what it was, getting rid of it, and then maintaining it was just keeping myself above water and keeping my mind, you know, my mind aware. One thing was exercise, you know, of course, you know, I know you do. We both do. And exercise is something that, you know, is ingrained in my life. You know, thankfully, my wife, who is an incredible runner. I mean, she's practically, you know, an Olympic material, or was. I mean, she runs like you would imagine. And she got me into it early on, you know, and that's turned into not something I do enjoy doing it, but it's just something that I have to do, you know, and it helps me with my mind. It helps me think about things, you know, if I'm going through a situation where I really need to digest something and I really need to interpolate some data and just come out with some sort of answer, running really helps with that. So that's one way. You know, another sort of maintenance thing for me is, and I think, and I mentioned it, I mentioned this to you on the side peripherally, which was I I tried the AA thing. Um, I love AA. I think it's an incredible program. In fact, I think it would help solve a lot of problems for people that they don't even realize. I mean, AA is great for almost any aspect of life, not just alcoholism or drug addiction or anything like that. There's other things that AA can help you with. It didn't, for some reason, it didn't really work for me. Um, I liked the principles, but it just didn't resonate for me. Um, but I took little tidbits from it, you know, I think, and that's what did help me maintain where I'm at. And one of them was, I think they say people, places, and things, or something like that. And that was okay. From a social aspect, I was so social. I was out with my friends in LA when I got to LA. You know, I had this enormous amount of friends. It was like high school. I worked at Guitar Center in Hollywood, and that was my first job I had in LA. And it was great. It was like, you know, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I mean, really. I mean, it was just like all of a sudden I'm back in high school because there's so many people there. There was like, you know, 40 and 50 employees there. And I knew every single one of them. And we were all just great friends. And we would go out every night. So much fun. But that was not helping me at the time. You know, that was, and I couldn't figure out, why can't I get out of music retail, you know? And not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just I was trying to get out of it. I was trying to that was not what I wanted to do. I wanted to get in, you know, get into something else. I wanted to be a studio musician actually at the time. So being, you know, in that sort of setting with friends that are just all around you, and we just had so much fun, and we were just calling and hanging out every single night in our apartment buildings and just listening to great records, and it was awesome. I mean, I look back and I'm just like, God, this was the greatest time of my life. It really was one of the greatest times. Actually, the greatest time of my life, obviously, was meeting my wife, but my second greatest time definitely was that. And but anyway, I I just, that was what I was doing. I was just you know, out and socializing. So once I realized, okay, I need to remove myself from that. I need to remove myself from certain people. I need to remove myself from certain things, certain places. Now, these weren't bad people, you know. These are people I still talk to, you know, today. But I had to remove myself. I
Right.
had I had to, because if I didn't do that, I I don't know what would have happened. I would have probably been in the I would have just stagnated. And so I made that decision at one point early on. And just to illustrate sort of a timetable, like this, this was right when I first came out to LA, and I've been out in LA now for over 20 years. And the first couple of years, I just started to realize I need to remove myself from this. I need to be a hermit.
Yep.
I need to be a caveman. I need to sit in my room and concentrate on one thing, which is music, or sound. And that's what I did. I just
Right.
sat in my room, basically, when I say room, my apartment, um, and just focused on sound, on whatever I could, and just stopped hanging out with people, and then and stopped drinking at the same time. And I said, I'm this is hurting me because I really want to see my friends and this and that. And but I did it. And then eventually I moved, and that even removing me further, moving to another whole nother place in LA where I didn't know anybody and they didn't know me, and I was starting new relationships. All of a sudden they knew Harrison as the guy that didn't drink, and the guy that, was a great guy to hang out with, but he didn't drink. So this is the way that I got to where I was. I had to figure out a way to change things, and I had to figure out a way to keep my eye on the ball and move forward. So this is all part of, the overall.
Yeah. Well, that whole process there you just explained is really where it is the hardest part for a lot of people to stay consistent. And it's okay. I actually say this, that because I went through this with my dad. It's a big part of why we started this company. My partner, my business partner, went through this like you did, but I watched my father go through it his whole life, and then he died and we lost him. And I will coin the phrase that I say it's not every year of sobriety that you count, it's every minute, because every minute turns into the next minute is a victory. Because I could see my dad when he fell down a bunch of times, it would happen within an hour. It'd be like he would go a year and a half. And then I could see the minute where he had the glaze in his eyes. And it was just like, a minute ago, you were fine. We just threw away a year and a half, like, holy shit, it was brutal. But he went minute to minute. And I'll give you a quick example, similar to what you just said. He would sit up at night between like 11 and 4 in the morning, because he had this like night thing, which I have too, where he would paint. He got into that Bob Ross book, and whatever it took, we'd buy it for him. Like, oh, you want to do Bob Ross? We'd buy him like all these Bob Ross books. And he would sit up at night and he would paint. And 4 or 5 hours would go by. The time when he used to drink, between 10 at night and 2 in the morning, I guess, he would do the painting. He would start around 11 usually. And then he would be so tired he'd fall asleep. I have all his paintings actually right here. And that was his thing. That was his isolation. I kept him out of the bar. But man, I'll tell you, the minute, all it took was a minute, and he was back on, and was like, God damn it. We just, up and down, up and down. But that period where you were a hermit that you said, or you kind of left you went over here, that is the precious moments of like the difference between, staying and then, not staying sober, I guess. And every day and every minute you should be honored. So, congrats to you. I could talk to you for hours, and we will talk more. Maybe I'll have a part 2 of this, because I'd love to drill into probably every 10 things you said already. So we went through the story. We went through some of the mechanics of how you maintained. We went through, your good and your bad times. Let's finish up on what's next for you, and we'll close out there. So what's next for you in your life? Not just about sobriety, but just, what makes you happy and what do you look forward to do? I will plug you. You played on a couple of my songs on my album coming out. So that's one thing. But what else is going on in your future?
Well, to go on the plug thing, if anybody needs an organ player, just kidding. I love to entertain it, because that is, my passion. Sound is my life, and I love playing, music, and playing with you again has been amazing. I mean, it's just like
Way do we do it live though, man?
Totally, man. I mean, it's cyclical. I mean, I've kept that up. I've kept up my chops, and I play every day. I've been playing every day. I've gotten worlds, eons better than I was back when we started. But that's a whole nother story. But I just wanted to say that you had tapped into your father, and I don't want to belabor go on and on and on about this because I think everybody gets the point. But yes, there are triggers, and I've been without a drink for an enormous amount of time. I mean, I don't think about it. It's gotten to the point where it was so long ago that I don't even. But I still get triggers of the anxiety every once in a while. It'll pop up, and to be honest, but I kind of like it now. I kind of dig it because I'll tell you why. It helps me in situations. It gets my blood pumping. I feel like I'm running, and I say to myself, "This is silly." And actually, the running, that's what takes over. Is all of a sudden I start to get the anxiety, and then I feel like I'm running, and I know how to cool down from that.
Oh,
So that's been my whole deal, So that's really helped. But there are triggers, and and you're right. It's every minute could go either way, and it's because for me and your dad, alcohol, there's that part of your brain that will always be there. It will, no matter what you do, unless you have someone remove it from your brain somehow, from a surgical standpoint, it's always going to be there. It's there, and that's your dad. He couldn't deal with it, and I don't blame him because I was right on the edge, and I'm no better person. The only difference I had was I didn't have a family. I didn't have. There's a lot of things I didn't have, and I was able just to reset. I was able to hit that reset button,
right.
and not many people can do that. But anyway, moving forward, I'm in a wonderful situation. I love my life. I love my wife. I mean, I'm just so blessed with her. We grew up together, in Philly, as you know. So, I mean, we have a long history, and my kids are just like, my 2 6-year-olds are just like incredible. My mom's here with me.
Yeah.
My father-in-law's here. I mean, I have my mother-in-law's. I mean, everybody's around me. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful time in my life. Career-wise, we there was a little bit actually of a hiccup with COVID. That was very tough in the film industry.
Yeah.
I wish it was handled a little bit differently. Because I think that there would have been a way to mitigate that. Us having to get hit impacted so hard with COVID, but we dealt with it, and I've been going to mixing on the dub stage for films, through COVID with masks on and all that. So we're doing it, and there's a lot of work out there. There's a lot of work out there for myself and my colleagues now, and we're very fortunate. And my goal is to move forward. This is my art. This is my art form. My other art form is music. I mean, it's the same thing. I don't look at it any different. I'm sitting in my studio right now, and I've got my Leslie sitting right in front of me to my right. I've got my drum set right here to my right. I've got my organ right there. Yeah, just like it's like, I mean, me, Charlie, and John from the old band could literally just come in here right now and play. I've got everything, and that's fun for me because I have my kids. We're like we're like the Partridge Family, or the Jacksons. Like, we sit down and we play, and it's great. I teach them everything. So this is all fun for me, and I think, I'm learning that everything can't be about your career. As much as I love my career, and as much as I feel so fortunate to have such amazing colleagues and such amazing opportunities, I mean, just stuff. I've been doing a lot of animated films recently, and I absolutely love it. And it's like a whole new thing for me because I I've been doing them for the past, 4 or 5 years, something like that. But I absolutely love doing animated films. That to me is fun because it's like I don't have to deal with any, sometimes when you're working on a film, there's just some stuff you're just like, oh, this is kind of silly and this is kind of objectionable in a way. With animated films, it's fun. It's a
Yeah,
fun
yeah.
thing, and you can really get into the art form of it. So that's something that I've been really, really having a lot of fun with. And I don't know, I hope that I can maintain the course that I'm on, because it's exactly where I want to be. And you know, as far as future accolades and stuff like that, like I don't really need any. I'm happy exactly where I'm at, and I'm happy doing what I was doing, and I want to keep it going as long as I can. And I think the most important thing is to maintain my sobriety through it. And that's been something that I've been blessed with. Really, I've been blessed with the fact that I've been able to do it for so long.
Yeah, well, it's absolutely remarkable in every way. I don't even have words for it, to be honest with you. So let's manifest, because I think we manifest our lives to where we are right now together. If we could do throw a goal out there, it'd be playing together live. That's easy. I think you and I, once we can get back out there, that's easy. But what if we said we'll throw it out there? We do it at the baked potato or something like that, right? Get a little more specific. But I'm going to throw a
That'd be
goal
awesome.
there for us to do some live work together. I just talking to you about it is getting me like all jonesing for playing again, which I've been working really hard to keep my anxiety down because we haven't been able to play. But let's say thanks to you for the time you spent here. I will definitely come back to you with a few ideas, because you've hit on 3 different things that fall into these quadrants that I was talking about, that we're trying to provide on our website for people to watch and to consume. The content is all about supporting the community. So you used community a lot in this conversation. So we have courage, which you've gone through, the compassion part, which you've had for others and people have had for you, and then you've been a part of a new community, and you mentioned community a lot. So those 3 elements are the core foundation of what we're trying to build with our company. So thanks for being with us and sharing this, because I guarantee this is going to give people a lot of hope. That's the whole point. So I'll say thank you for now, and I'll talk to you in a few minutes.
Cool, man. Sounds good.
Harrison, Meyle, everybody. Thanks, Harrison.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.